The year was 1634. In the cold, shadowed town of Eger, now Cheb, in the heart of Bohemia, Albrecht von Wallenstein, one of the most powerful men in Europe, met his untimely and violent end. A towering military commander who had reshaped the course of the brutal 30 Years' War, Wallenstein's life ended not on the battlefield but by the hands of assassins, sent by the very emperor he had once served. But behind this enigmatic figure of military genius and political ambition stood a woman often overlooked in history's grand narrative, Isabella Katharina von Harrach. She was not just Wallenstein's wife. She was his confidant, strategist, and protector in a world where power was as fragile as it was deadly. Through love, loyalty, and intellect, Isabella shaped the destiny of one of the most controversial figures of early modern Europe. This is their story, a tale of ambition and betrayal, of war and survival, of a woman's strength in a man's world torn apart by religious conflict and political intrigue. It is a story that unfolds amid the chaos of the Holy Roman Empire, where empires clashed and allegiances shifted like the winds. For an American audience, this story resonates far beyond the distant past of 17th-century Europe. It is a saga of leadership under pressure, the price of loyalty, and the human drama behind the headlines of history. Isabella's story reminds us that behind every great man stands a complex network of influences, often carried on the shoulders of those who dare to wield power in quieter yet no less significant ways. As we journey through the turbulent years of the 30 Years' War, through the rise and fall of Wallenstein's empire, we will see how Isabella's influence was woven into the very fabric of history, shaping battles, forging alliances, and navigating deadly court intrigues. Her life, often overshadowed, reveals the untold power of women in shaping history, challenging us to rethink the stories we know. Prepare to enter a world of war and diplomacy, passion and peril, a world where the fate of Europe was decided not only by swords and armies but also by whispered words in palace halls. This is the story of Isabella Katharina von Harrach, the shadow behind the general. In the early years of the 17th century, Europe was a continent caught in the throes of seismic change. The reverberations of religious schisms, dynastic rivalries, and emerging nation-states rippled through its courts and battlefields. Nowhere was this turbulence more intense than in the lands of the Holy Roman Empire, a sprawling patchwork of kingdoms, principalities and duchies where loyalty was as fluid as the shifting alliances between Catholic and Protestant factions. It was into this fractious world that Isabella Katharina von Harrach was born, an aristocratic daughter of Bohemia, whose life would become inextricably entwined with one of the most enigmatic and powerful figures of her time, Albrecht von Wallenstein. Isabella came into the world in 1607, in a period marked by uncertainty and upheaval. Her family, the Harrachs, belonged to the Bohemian nobility, a class that balanced precariously between their allegiance to the Habsburg Emperor and the cultural currents sweeping through Central Europe. Nobles like the Harrachs were expected to uphold the traditions of their ancestors, manage vast estates, and navigate the dangerous waters of imperial politics. For young Isabella, this meant a childhood steeped in the rigorous expectations of aristocratic life, education in languages, religion, and social etiquette, alongside an early immersion in the intricacies of power and influence. Meanwhile, a generation older and already carving his path through this chaotic landscape was Albrecht von Wallenstein. Born in 1583 into a minor noble family of Bohemian and Moravian descent, Wallenstein was a man driven by ambition and vision. His early years were shaped by the cultural crosscurrents of Central Europe, where loyalty to the emperor mingled with the religious tensions that would soon explode into full-scale war. The 30 Years' War, which began in 1618, was not just a conflict of armies but of ideologies, identities, and survival. Wallenstein's military genius and political acumen would make him a key player in this drama. But his journey was neither simple nor assured. In these formative years, both Isabella and Wallenstein inhabited worlds defined by their noble birth but shaped by vastly different experiences. While Wallenstein moved through military ranks and sought favor at the imperial court, Isabella's world was one of domestic influence and social diplomacy. Yet, the forces that shaped their lives, religion, power, family legacy, would soon draw their paths together, setting the stage for a partnership that would influence the course of European history. Bohemia itself was a land of contrasts and tensions. With a population divided between Catholics and Protestants, it had been the spark point for the conflict that engulfed much of Europe. The defenestration of Prague in 1618, when Protestant nobles threw Catholic officials from a castle window, ignited the war that would devastate the continent. Isabella was born into this volatile climate, her early years shadowed by the growing turmoil that threatened to tear apart the social fabric of her homeland. Despite the chaos around them, noble families like the Harrachs maintained a semblance of stability through carefully arranged marriages, political alliances, and religious affiliations. For Isabella, her upbringing would have included not only lessons in managing estates and courtly behavior, but also an acute awareness of the delicate balance required to maintain her family's standing. Women of her rank were often the unseen architects of political power, their marriages serving as alliances, their counsel shaping the decisions of powerful men. Wallenstein's early career mirrored the uncertainties of the time. Initially a soldier and mercenary, he quickly distinguished himself with his strategic mind and ability to command loyalty from diverse troops. The war's chaotic nature demanded leaders who could manage armies drawn from various principalities and religions, a task that Wallenstein approached with a combination of pragmatism and ambition. His rise was meteoric, propelled by both his successes on the battlefield and his skill in navigating the complex web of imperial politics. As Wallenstein's influence grew, so did the attention of the imperial court. Emperor Ferdinand II, a staunch Catholic determined to restore Habsburg authority, recognized Wallenstein's value but also viewed his growing power with suspicion. It was a precarious relationship defined by mutual need and wary distrust. Within this environment, the personal alliances Wallenstein forged would prove as crucial as his military victories. It was against this backdrop that Wallenstein and Isabella's paths crossed, their eventual union marking a turning point not only in their personal lives but in the unfolding history of the empire. Their marriage in 1625 was more than a joining of two individuals. It was a strategic alliance between two noble families, an intersection of ambition, loyalty, and survival in uncertain times. For Isabella, marrying Wallenstein meant stepping into a world of unprecedented power and danger. She became a key figure in managing the delicate social and political networks that underpinned her husband's authority. Her intelligence, poise, and resilience would become indispensable as Wallenstein's star rose and his shadows lengthened around him. In the coming years, their partnership would be tested by the relentless pressures of war, court intrigue, and betrayal. Isabella's role extended far beyond the domestic sphere. She was a trusted advisor, a protector of family interests, and a silent force behind many of Wallenstein's decisions. Their story is a testament to the often unrecognized power of women in history, particularly in times when the fates of nations hung in the balance. As we delve deeper into the lives of Isabella Katharina von Harrach and Albrecht von Wallenstein, we will uncover a narrative rich in complexity and human drama, from the quiet halls of Bohemian castles to the thunder of imperial battlefields. Their journey reveals how personal ambition and political strategy intertwine. It challenges us to reconsider the role of women in shaping history and to appreciate the intricate dance of power and loyalty that defined one of Europe's most tumultuous eras. Isabella's childhood unfolded within the imposing walls of her family's estates, where the rhythms of noble life were punctuated by lessons in language, religion, and diplomacy. From an early age, she was groomed not only to be a dutiful daughter but also a shrewd observer of the subtle power plays that defined aristocratic society. Her education included Latin and German, languages of power and administration, alongside the study of Catholic doctrine. As the Harrach family were devout adherents of the Counter-Reformation sweeping through the Habsburg territories. In this, Isabella was steeped in the conviction that faith was not merely a private matter but a weapon and shield in the turbulent political battles of her time. Her family's connections extended deep into the imperial court, a web of alliances that gave Isabella a front-row seat to the maneuverings of princes, generals, and diplomats. Yet despite the grandeur and privilege, the specter of war and religious conflict loomed large over her world. The Bohemian nobility was a fractured class, torn between old loyalties and new allegiances, and the violent outbreak of the 30 Years' War shattered the fragile peace they had maintained. Nobles faced the impossible task of defending their lands, their faith, and their status amid a continent-wide conflict that defied simple explanations or easy victories. Meanwhile, Albrecht von Wallenstein's rise was accelerating. Born into modest nobility, he had leveraged his military prowess and keen intellect to carve out a reputation as one of the most capable commanders in the imperial forces. His approach was methodical and innovative. He recruited, trained, and equipped armies at his own expense, a bold move that both earned him loyalty from his troops and concern from his imperial patrons. His vision went beyond mere battlefield success. Wallenstein sought to create a power base independent of the traditional aristocracy, a factor that would both elevate and endanger him. Wallenstein's increasing influence inevitably brought him into contact with the highest echelons of power, including the imperial court where decisions about the war's direction were made. It was here that the interplay of ambition, loyalty, and suspicion began to define his fate. Emperor Ferdinand II recognized Wallenstein's strategic importance but remained wary of the general's growing autonomy. The emperor's desire to restore Catholic dominance and Habsburg authority clashed with Wallenstein's often pragmatic, sometimes self-serving approach to politics. Amidst these tensions, Wallenstein's marriage to Isabella Katharina von Harrach emerged as a critical alliance. Their union was not simply a personal contract but a calculated move to cement political ties and bolster Wallenstein's legitimacy within Bohemia's noble society. For Isabella, this marriage propelled her into the heart of imperial power, offering a platform from which she would exercise influence that few women of her time could claim. The dynamics of their relationship were shaped by the extraordinary pressures of their era. Isabella was more than a passive partner. She became an essential counselor to Wallenstein, navigating the treacherous currents of court intrigue and war diplomacy with a blend of grace and strategic acumen. Her ability to manage social relations, broker alliances, and maintain the loyalty of key figures was invaluable in an environment where a single misstep could mean ruin. As Wallenstein's military campaigns unfolded, from the early successes against Protestant forces to the complex negotiations that sometimes verged on treason in the eyes of the emperor, Isabella's role remained pivotal. She provided the stability and support that allowed Wallenstein to pursue his ambitions, while also contending with the personal sacrifices demanded by their public lives. Her resilience in the face of adversity and her quiet strength would prove critical as the tides of war and politics shifted unpredictably. The 30 Years' War itself was a crucible that forged and tested their partnership. With armies marching across Central Europe, towns burning, and millions displaced or dead, the stakes could not have been higher. Isabella's world was one of constant danger. Political enemies lurked in every court, and the threat of betrayal was ever present. Yet she managed to wield her influence effectively, often acting as a mediator and strategist behind the scenes. The backdrop of religious conflict intensified these challenges. The Harrach family's Catholic allegiance aligned them with the Habsburg cause, but the shifting loyalties of Bohemia's nobility meant that trust was fragile. Isabella had to balance her familial loyalty with the practical demands of supporting Wallenstein's often controversial policies. Her diplomatic skills were put to the test as she sought to maintain their position and protect their interests in a volatile landscape. By understanding Isabella's early life and the formative years of her marriage to Wallenstein, we gain insight into the complex interplay of gender, power, and politics in early modern Europe. Her story challenges the notion that women of the era were merely bystanders. Instead, it reveals how noble women could wield subtle but significant influence, shaping decisions that echoed far beyond their immediate surroundings. As this narrative unfolds, we will continue to explore how Isabella's intelligence, courage, and determination intersected with the turbulent currents of her time. Her influence on Wallenstein's military strategies, political maneuvers, and ultimate fate illustrates the profound impact one individual could have, even in a world dominated by kings and generals. Together, their lives offer a vivid window into the human dimensions of history's grand conflicts. As the years passed, the volatile world around Isabella and Wallenstein became the crucible in which their destinies were forged. The fire of war consumed cities and shattered old orders, but within the storm, their partnership took shape, a union born of necessity, ambition, and an unspoken understanding of the stakes they faced. Isabella's upbringing in the corridors of noble power had prepared her for a life of political maneuvering. But nothing could fully anticipate the pressures and dangers that came with being the wife of one of Europe's most controversial generals. Wallenstein's ambitions were vast. He sought not only to lead armies but to reshape the political landscape of the Holy Roman Empire. His vision required both military might and delicate diplomacy, tools that Isabella would wield beside him, often in the shadows. As their marriage approached in 1625, it was clear that Isabella was not merely a companion but a vital partner in the complex game of imperial politics. Their alliance represented a powerful fusion of military prowess and noble lineage, bridging the worlds of sword and courtly influence. For Isabella, it was a transformation from a noblewoman bound by tradition to a figure at the very heart of European power struggles. For Wallenstein, it was a step toward securing his fragile position within the empire's fractured hierarchy. As we close this first chapter of their story, we have glimpsed the worlds that shaped them: Isabella's aristocratic upbringing steeped in faith and duty, and Wallenstein's rise through ambition and military skill. Together, they were poised to face the turbulent decade ahead, where love and loyalty would be tested against the brutal realities of war and political intrigue. The next phase of their journey will explore the marriage that bound them, not just as husband and wife, but as allies navigating a dangerous court, shaping the tides of war, and confronting the shadows that gather around those who dare to seize power. Isabella's influence would deepen, her role expanding beyond the domestic to the political. As the 30 Years' War reached new and devastating heights, in the winter of 1625, beneath the shadowed vaults of a Bohemian cathedral, Isabella Katharina von Harrach and Albrecht von Wallenstein were wed, a union that would alter not only their lives but the fate of an empire embroiled in relentless conflict. Their marriage was more than a private vow of love. It was a calculated alliance forged in the crucible of politics and war, intertwining the ambitions of two powerful noble families during one of Europe's most turbulent eras. Isabella entered this marriage with a keen awareness of its stakes. As a daughter of the Harrach family, her role had always been clear: to uphold and expand the family's influence through strategic alliances. But marrying Wallenstein, a man whose meteoric rise had unsettled courts and kings, meant stepping into a world where power was both intoxicating and perilous. Wallenstein was no ordinary noble. He commanded vast armies, controlled immense resources, and wielded influence that bordered on regal authority. Yet, with such power came suspicion and envy from those who viewed him as a threat to the established order. From the earliest days of their union, Isabella proved herself indispensable. Her intelligence and diplomatic skill complemented Wallenstein's military genius. She became his closest confidant, offering counsel on the intricate dynamics of court politics and managing the delicate web of alliances that sustained his authority. While Wallenstein directed armies in the field, Isabella navigated the equally dangerous battlefield of imperial politics, leveraging her family connections and social acumen to secure their position. Their partnership was a study in contrasts and balance. Wallenstein was a man of grand vision and bold actions, often distant and enigmatic. Isabella, in contrast, wielded influence through subtlety and interpersonal grace, understanding that survival in the imperial court required more than force. It demanded tact, persuasion, and sometimes ruthless pragmatism. Together, they forged a formidable alliance, a union that blurred the lines between personal devotion and political strategy. The backdrop to their marriage was the escalating chaos of the 30 Years' War, a conflict that devastated Central Europe and reshaped its political landscape. Wallenstein's role as commander of the imperial armies placed him at the heart of the struggle, tasked with suppressing Protestant rebellions and securing Habsburg dominance. His innovative approach to raising and maintaining armies, funded largely through his own estates and resources, allowed him unprecedented autonomy. This financial independence, however, sowed distrust among the emperor and other nobles who feared Wallenstein's growing power. Amid these tensions, Isabella's role extended beyond that of a noble wife. She acted as a liaison between Wallenstein and key political figures, smoothing over disputes and facilitating communication where official channels faltered. Her ability to balance competing interests was critical in maintaining Wallenstein's fragile alliances. In many ways, she was the glue holding together the social fabric that sustained his military campaigns. At court, Isabella's presence was both respected and scrutinized. The Habsburg court was a theater of intrigue, where whispers could topple careers and favor was as fleeting as the seasons. Isabella's noble birth granted her entry, but her influence was earned through intelligence and discretion. She cultivated relationships with other noblewomen, diplomats, and clergy, building a network that extended Wallenstein's reach. Her social gatherings were carefully orchestrated events that blended hospitality with political maneuvering, offering subtle cues of allegiance and intent. Their marriage also bore personal challenges. The demands of war and politics often separated them for months or years, and the shadow of suspicion hung over their household. Wallenstein's rumored ambitions and secret negotiations with Protestant leaders created a climate of uncertainty and danger. Isabella, aware of these risks, balanced loyalty to her husband with the imperative to protect her family and legacy. Her letters and records reveal a woman grappling with the weight of power and the vulnerabilities it exposed. As the war dragged on, Wallenstein's reputation oscillated between that of a savior of the empire and a potential usurper. Isabella's influence became increasingly vital as factions at court sought to undermine him. She acted not only as a defender of her husband's interests but as an advocate for their shared vision of a stable and prosperous realm under Habsburg rule, one that could withstand the fractures of religion and rebellion. The years following their marriage saw a series of military campaigns and political maneuvers that tested the strength of their alliance. Battles won and lost, treaties brokered and broken, all unfolded against a backdrop of growing paranoia and shifting loyalties. Isabella's role in these events, though often behind the scenes, was indispensable. Her counsel helped Wallenstein navigate the treacherous waters of imperial politics even as his enemies gathered like storm clouds on the horizon. As we move deeper into the story, we will explore the complex interplay of love, power, and survival that defined Isabella and Wallenstein's marriage. Their partnership was not merely a personal bond but a strategic alliance forged in a time when Europe's future hung in the balance. Together, they stood at the nexus of war and diplomacy, shaping history in ways that continue to resonate centuries later. As the icy winds of winter thawed into the uncertain warmth of spring, the year 1626 brought renewed urgency to the 30 Years' War. Wallenstein, newly married to Isabella, took command of the imperial armies with a determination that startled both allies and adversaries. His methods were unconventional, raising a private army funded by his own considerable wealth. Rather than relying solely on imperial coffers, and his vision extended beyond the immediate battles to a lasting reshaping of power in Central Europe. Isabella's influence was most evident during these campaigns. While Wallenstein strategized troop movements and negotiated with military leaders, Isabella managed the home front and court affairs with equal precision. She coordinated correspondence, managed intelligence gathered from diplomatic contacts, and advised on the delicate balance between assertiveness and diplomacy. Her letters to Wallenstein, though often terse, reveal a woman attuned to the subtleties of power and the fragility of trust. Their marriage was a partnership of contrasts, he a man accustomed to command on the battlefield, she a master of influence in salons and court chambers. Where Wallenstein was direct and commanding, Isabella employed nuance and persuasion. This dynamic allowed them to operate on multiple fronts, the public theater of war and the private corridors of power. Wallenstein's successes in campaigns across Bohemia, Moravia, and beyond enhanced his reputation but also deepened suspicions among the emperor's advisors. His growing autonomy and wealth sparked envy and fear. The emperor, Ferdinand II, while initially supportive, began to regard Wallenstein as a potential rival rather than a loyal servant. Court factions, sensing weakness, whispered accusations of disloyalty and ambition. Isabella found herself navigating these treacherous waters with increasing skill. She cultivated relationships with influential figures, nobles, clergy, and foreign envoys, crafting a network of support that bolstered Wallenstein's position. Her social gatherings became strategic forums, blending hospitality with political negotiation. She understood that power was often wielded not through force but through subtlety and connection. Yet, the pressures of war and court intrigue took a personal toll. Wallenstein's extended absences weighed heavily on their relationship, and Isabella grappled with the uncertainty surrounding her husband's ambitions and loyalties. Rumors swirled of secret negotiations with Protestant leaders casting shadows over their household. Isabella's resolve was tested as she balanced her roles as wife, mother, and political strategist. Throughout this period, the couple faced both triumphs and setbacks. Victories on the battlefield were tempered by diplomatic failures and internal dissent. Isabella's influence grew not by proclamation but through quiet resilience and unwavering loyalty. She was the steady anchor amid storms of suspicion and betrayal. The fragile alliance between Wallenstein and Emperor Ferdinand II would soon face its ultimate test. As Wallenstein's power peaked, so did the fears of those who viewed him as a threat to imperial authority. Isabella's role became ever more critical not only in protecting her husband's interests but in shaping the narrative that could justify his actions and preserve their legacy. In this crucible of war and politics, Isabella Katharina von Harrach emerged not merely as a noblewoman but as a key architect of one of the most extraordinary military and political careers in European history. Her story challenges us to reconsider the often unseen forces that shape historical events, the alliances forged in whispered conversations, the counsel given in private chambers, and the courage required to stand beside a man whose fate would change the course of a continent. As we move forward, the tensions between loyalty and ambition, love and power will intensify. The next chapters will delve into the peak of Wallenstein's power and the growing shadows of intrigue that threatened to unravel everything they had built together. As 1627 unfolded, the political landscape of the Holy Roman Empire was as volatile as ever, with alliances constantly shifting and power struggles intensifying within the imperial court. Wallenstein's military campaigns had made him indispensable to Emperor Ferdinand II's efforts to crush Protestant resistance and reassert Catholic dominance. Yet, with each victory, the general's influence grew to a degree that unsettled even the emperor himself. In this climate of suspicion and ambition, Isabella Katharina von Harrach took on an increasingly pivotal role. She understood that her husband's survival, and by extension their family's fortune, depended as much on courtly diplomacy as on military might. Isabella worked tirelessly to maintain their network of allies, corresponding discreetly with nobles and diplomats, many of whom recognized the precarious balance of power and sought favor or protection through her influence. One such alliance was with key Catholic princes who, while loyal to the emperor, also feared Wallenstein's expanding autonomy. Isabella's charm and political acumen allowed her to broker dialogues that eased tensions and preserved Wallenstein's standing, at least temporarily. Her salons in Prague and Vienna became hubs of whispered negotiations and strategic conversations where loyalty was both demanded and bartered. Meanwhile, Wallenstein's military strategy was evolving. Rather than relying solely on brute force, he increasingly pursued negotiations and truces with Protestant factions, aiming to consolidate power and minimize destruction in territories under his control. This pragmatic approach was controversial, seen by some as necessary statesmanship and by others as treasonous leniency. Isabella, ever attuned to the dangers of court opinion, counseled discretion and patience, recognizing that the tides of favor could shift swiftly and without warning. The tension between Wallenstein's vision and the emperor's expectations came to a head in 1629 with the issuance of the Edict of Restitution, a sweeping decree by Ferdinand II aimed at restoring Catholic properties lost to Protestants. While the edict aligned with Wallenstein's religious stance, its harsh enforcement exacerbated unrest and complicated his efforts to negotiate peace in certain regions. Isabella's diplomatic skills were tested as she worked to mitigate the fallout, advocating for moderation and political pragmatism. On the personal front, the couple's relationship deepened amid the pressures surrounding them. Isabella was more than a supportive spouse. She was a partner in strategy and survival. Their correspondence reveals moments of tenderness, but also shared anxiety over the precariousness of their situation. Wallenstein, often perceived as aloof and enigmatic, entrusted Isabella with his fears and plans, relying on her judgment when court politics grew perilous. Yet, the growing rifts within the imperial court could not be fully bridged. By 1630, Wallenstein's position was both stronger and more precarious than ever. His independent army had become a symbol of his power, but also a lightning rod for accusations of disloyalty. The emperor's ministers and rival nobles whispered of conspiracy and ambition, using the court's rumor mills to erode Wallenstein's support. Isabella faced the daunting task of defending her husband's honor while safeguarding their family's future. She navigated this dangerous terrain with a mix of public grace and private resolve, orchestrating alliances and managing enemies with equal skill. Her role was crucial in delaying Wallenstein's downfall, buying time through careful negotiation and strategic retreats in the political arena. Their story during these years is a study in contrasts, moments of triumph shadowed by growing distrust, personal devotion tested by political necessity. Isabella's influence was both subtle and profound, shaping decisions that affected not only her husband's fate, but the course of the 30 Years' War itself. As the war dragged on, the challenges mounted. Wallenstein's attempts at peace negotiations with Protestant forces alarmed many in the Catholic hierarchy, including Emperor Ferdinand II. This, combined with his autonomous power and wealth, set the stage for an inevitable confrontation. Isabella's loyalty and political savvy would be pushed to their limits as the couple faced mounting hostility and the gathering storm of betrayal. In this chapter of their lives, we see the complex interplay of power, ambition, and survival. Isabella's story, often overshadowed by the grandeur of Wallenstein's military exploits, reveals the indispensable role she played in one of Europe's most tumultuous periods. Her influence was a testament to the strength and resilience required to navigate the dangerous waters of war and politics, where the fate of empires could hinge on a whispered word or a carefully placed alliance. As we prepare to enter the next phase of their story, the peak of Wallenstein's power and the darkening shadows of intrigue, Isabella's unwavering presence reminds us that behind every great leader NDS a partner whose courage and intelligence shaped the course of history. By the early 1630s, Albrecht von Wallenstein had reached the zenith of his power, commanding the imperial armies, controlling vast territories, and wielding unprecedented political influence. He was arguably the most formidable figure in the Holy Roman Empire outside of the emperor himself. Yet with this extraordinary ascent came an equally extraordinary peril: the growing suspicion and hostility of Emperor Ferdinand. The two and rival nobles who feared Wallenstein's autonomy threatened the very fabric of imperial authority. Isabella Katharina von Harrach, now seasoned by years of political and social navigation, found herself at the eye of a storm that threatened to engulf them both. Her influence was greater than ever, but so too were the dangers. The court was a treacherous maze of shifting loyalties, whispered accusations, and veiled threats, and Isabella wielded her intelligence and grace as weapons to protect her husband's position. Wallenstein's military campaigns had secured significant victories, yet his diplomatic approach, including controversial negotiations with Protestant leaders, fueled rumors of disloyalty. His private army, financed through his own estates, was seen by many as a state within a state. The emperor's ministers grew increasingly vocal in their demands to curtail his power. Amid these tensions, Isabella's role evolved from discreet advisor to active political operator. She engaged directly with influential figures, managing alliances and countering the court's growing factionalism. Her salons were more than social gatherings. They were strategic meetings where the fate of Wallenstein's command was debated and decided. Through correspondence and conversation, she sought to quell fears, clarify misunderstandings, and project an image of unwavering loyalty to the emperor. Despite her efforts, cracks in Wallenstein's support widened. The emperor, under pressure from his council and wary of Wallenstein's ambitions, began to question the general's loyalty more openly. The stakes grew higher when Wallenstein reportedly entertained secret negotiations with the enemy, a move interpreted by many as potential treason. Isabella, aware of the growing peril, intensified her efforts to safeguard her husband. She coordinated with allies, sought information on court conspiracies, and advised Wallenstein on how to navigate the increasingly hostile environment. Her resilience and political acumen became critical in this darkening chapter. But the wheels of intrigue and power often turn relentlessly. The alliance between Wallenstein and the emperor fractured, setting in motion events that would culminate in betrayal and assassination. Isabella's courage and resolve were tested as never before, her personal and political worlds collapsing around her. This phase of their story reveals the brutal realities of power, where loyalty is fragile and the line between friend and foe blurs. Isabella's story shines through the darkness as a testament to strength and endurance, reminding us that history's great dramas are shaped as much by those who operate in the shadows as by those who command the battlefield. By the dawn of the 1630s, Albrecht von Wallenstein stood at the pinnacle of his power. His private army, unprecedented in size and strength, was a force unmatched in the Holy Roman Empire. Commanding tens of thousands of soldiers, he had become the empire's de facto military leader, wielding influence that rivaled even that of Emperor Ferdinand II himself. His control over vast territories, his wealth, and his strategic vision positioned him as one of the most powerful men in Europe. Yet, with great power came greater peril. Wallenstein's rise unnerved many at court. The emperor's inner circle, a web of jealous nobles and wary advisors, viewed Wallenstein's growing autonomy with suspicion and fear. They whispered that his ambitions knew no bounds, that he sought not only to lead armies but to carve out a kingdom of his own. The general's attempts at negotiating peace with Protestant factions, while pragmatic, were seen as signs of disloyalty. Amid this tense atmosphere, Isabella Katharina von Harrach's role became more vital than ever. A woman of intelligence and poise, she stepped into the political fray with a blend of subtlety and strength. No longer confined to the private sphere, Isabella became an active agent in preserving her husband's standing. Her salons in Prague and Vienna transformed into centers of political influence, where nobles and diplomats gathered under her gracious but calculated hospitality. Isabella understood that survival in the imperial court required more than military might. It demanded alliances, patronage, and the careful management of perceptions. She cultivated relationships with influential figures, smoothing tensions and building bridges. Her correspondence reveals a keen awareness of court politics and a strategic mind navigating a labyrinth of intrigue. At the same time, Wallenstein's position grew increasingly precarious. Emperor Ferdinand II, under pressure from his council, began to question the loyalty of his once trusted general. Wallenstein's private negotiations with Protestant leaders, seen by many as a betrayal, exacerbated fears. The emperor's ministers pushed for his removal, viewing him as a dangerous rival. Isabella, aware of the mounting threat, intensified her efforts. She worked tirelessly behind the scenes, rallying allies and attempting to quell rumors. Her steadfast loyalty and political savvy bought Wallenstein precious time, even as the court's hostility deepened. Their story in these years is a study in contrasts, the heights of power shadowed by the gathering storm of betrayal. Isabella's influence, quiet but profound, shaped the events leading to one of history's most dramatic downfalls. Through her, we glimpse the often unseen forces that shape history's course, the courage, intelligence, and resilience required to navigate the perilous world of 17th-century European politics. As Wallenstein's power grew, so too did the complexity of the political landscape he and Isabella had to navigate. The imperial court was rife with factionalism, nobles jockeying for favor, clerics guarding religious interests, and foreign diplomats weaving their own webs of influence. Each whispered accusation or carefully placed rumor threatened to unravel the delicate fabric holding Wallenstein's authority in place. Isabella, acutely aware of the dangers, stepped decisively into this volatile arena. Unlike many noblewomen of her time who remained confined to private spheres, Isabella wielded her influence with remarkable agency. Her salons became hubs of political discourse where she carefully curated guests to include key figures capable of swaying opinion and power. She hosted elaborate gatherings in Prague, attended by high-ranking aristocrats, imperial officials, and influential clergy. These events were not merely social occasions but strategic platforms. Through conversations veiled in courtesy and charm, Isabella brokered alliances, diffused tensions, and subtly shaped policy discussions. Her understanding of human nature, its ambitions, fears, and desires, allowed her to maneuver effectively in a court often ruled by intrigue rather than truth. Letters from Isabella to Wallenstein during this period reveal a woman deeply engaged in the political currents swirling around them. She advised caution, urged patience, and reminded him of the importance of appearances and perception. She knew that, in the eyes of the emperor and his ministers, loyalty was never just stated, it had to be demonstrated continually through action and allegiance. Wallenstein, for his part, was often distant, preoccupied with military campaigns and high-stakes diplomacy. His rumored secret communications with Protestant leaders, aimed at negotiating peace and consolidating power, fed the fears of his enemies. To many at court, these actions bordered on betrayal, painting Wallenstein as a man who placed ambition above loyalty. Isabella faced a perilous balancing act. She remained devoted to her husband, yet she had to navigate a court increasingly hostile to his ambitions. She leveraged her family's connections and personal charm to build a network of allies willing to advocate for Wallenstein. Her diplomatic efforts bought time, shielding him from immediate censure and allowing him to continue his military and political maneuvers. However, the emperor's suspicions grew harder to assuage. By 1632, Wallenstein's authority was under direct threat. Factions at court demanded his dismissal or even arrest, citing alleged conspiracies and disloyalty. The general's refusal to fully align with the emperor's wishes and his independent command over a massive private army made him a unique and dangerous figure. In this increasingly fraught context, Isabella's role evolved from advisor and hostess to a political actor engaged in crisis management. She corresponded with influential nobles, sought intelligence on rival factions, and coordinated efforts to present Wallenstein as a loyal servant of the empire. Her ability to navigate the dangerous currents of court politics was vital in this precarious period. Despite their efforts, cracks in Wallenstein's position continued to widen. The growing mistrust between him and the emperor set the stage for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of the Holy Roman Empire. Isabella's determination and political skill were tested like never before as the couple confronted enemies within and without. Their story during these years is emblematic of the volatile mix of power, loyalty, and ambition that defined the 30 Years' War. Isabella's influence reveals how women, often relegated to the background in historical accounts, were in fact central to the survival and success of powerful men. Her courage, intelligence, and resilience shined through the darkening clouds gathering over Wallenstein's empire. As the shadow of betrayal lengthened, the fate of Wallenstein and Isabella hung in the balance. The next chapters will reveal the tragic unraveling of their fortunes and the dramatic climax that would leave an indelible mark on European history. As 1633 dawned, the fragile veneer of Wallenstein's power was cracking rapidly. Emperor Ferdinand II's patience had worn thin, and his court, once cautious, now openly conspired to remove the general who had become a symbol of both military might and potential rebellion. The rumors of Wallenstein's secret dealings with Protestant leaders had grown into damning accusations, fanned by rival nobles eager to see him fall. Isabella Katharina von Harrach found herself thrust into the eye of a political hurricane. Her husband's enemies sought to discredit and isolate him, and she stood as both his shield and strategist. Drawing on her deep understanding of court politics, she scrambled to marshal support, writing letters, negotiating with powerful figures, and organizing alliances. Her salons became last bastions of loyalty, places where the question was not if Wallenstein would fall, but when and how fiercely they would fight for him. Despite Isabella's tireless efforts, the tide was turning inexorably against them. The emperor's ministers issued ultimatums demanding Wallenstein's unconditional loyalty and the disbanding of his private army. Wallenstein's own ambivalence, his reluctance to fully submit to the emperor's demands while negotiating peace with the enemy, only fueled suspicions. Isabella counseled caution and diplomacy, but even her influence could not halt the growing momentum toward confrontation. In January 1634, the emperor officially declared Wallenstein a traitor. His fate was sealed. Assassins were dispatched, and on a cold February day in Eger, Wallenstein was murdered. The general's death sent shockwaves throughout Europe, a violent conclusion to a meteoric career that had reshaped the 30 Years' War. For Isabella, the loss was devastating on every level. Yet her story did not end with her husband's death. In the brutal aftermath, she became a guardian of his legacy and protector of their family's honor. She faced imperial suspicion and the dismantling of Wallenstein's vast estates. Yet she maneuvered with the same resilience and intelligence that had characterized her role during his rise. Isabella's survival and determination in the face of political ruin illustrate the often overlooked power of women in history. While Wallenstein's assassination marked a dramatic end to one chapter, Isabella's journey continued, shaping how history remembered the man and the turbulent era they had both inhabited. The chill of February 1634 was more than the bitter cold that gripped the town of Eger. It was the harbinger of the violent end to one of Europe's most enigmatic figures, Albrecht von Wallenstein. Once the mighty commander of the imperial armies, Wallenstein's star had risen with unprecedented speed, only to fall amidst betrayal and bloodshed. Yet, behind the headlines of assassination and treason lay a quieter, yet equally powerful story, that of Isabella Katharina von Harrach, the woman whose unwavering loyalty and fierce intelligence had shaped much of Wallenstein's rise, and who now faced the shattering aftermath of his death. The days leading to Wallenstein's assassination were fraught with tension and uncertainty. The emperor's court had finally moved to eliminate the threat they believed Wallenstein posed. Fueled by paranoia, political rivalry, and the shifting tides of war, orders were issued in secrecy. Agents were dispatched to ensure the general's removal. But Wallenstein, ever cautious yet confident in his alliances and power, remained defiantly poised, perhaps underestimating the lethal resolve of his enemies. Isabella's position during this deadly hour was precarious. She had been Wallenstein's confidant and advisor, deeply involved in managing his political alliances and mitigating threats. Yet, as the noose tightened, her influence could not reverse the tragic course set by the emperor and his ministers. Letters from Isabella reveal a woman torn between hope and despair, grappling with the terrifying realization that their fortunes were unraveling. On the night of February 25th, Wallenstein was betrayed by his own officers, men who had once sworn loyalty but now acted on imperial orders. The assassination was swift and brutal, carried out in a cold chamber far from the battlefields where Wallenstein had earned his fame. His death was a stark reminder of the perilous nature of power in a time when trust was fragile and betrayal common. For Isabella, the news was a devastating blow that would alter the course of her life. The man she had stood beside through war and court intrigue was gone, and with him, much of the security and influence they had built. But Isabella's story did not end with tragedy. It evolved into a fierce struggle for survival, legacy, and justice in a world that had turned against her family. The immediate aftermath of Wallenstein's assassination saw Isabella confronting a hostile court that sought to erase his memory and confiscate his estates. She faced imperial suspicion and social ostracism, yet she refused to be silenced or sidelined. Drawing on her resilience and diplomatic skill, Isabella embarked on a campaign to protect her children's inheritance and preserve Wallenstein's reputation. Her efforts took her through the courts of Vienna and Prague, negotiating with imperial officials and leveraging her family's noble connections. In private correspondence and public appeals, she painted a picture of Wallenstein as a loyal servant wronged by jealous rivals, a narrative that found sympathetic ears among some, even as others condemned him as a traitor. Isabella's struggle was emblematic of the broader turmoil engulfing Bohemia and the Holy Roman Empire. The 30 Years' War raged on, devastating populations and reshaping political boundaries, while families like the Harrachs grappled with the consequences of loyalty and ambition. Through it all, Isabella's determination and intellect stood out, challenging contemporary notions of women's roles in power and politics. The assassination of Albrecht von Wallenstein sent ripples through the courts of Europe, but nowhere were they felt more acutely than in the quiet chambers of his widow, Isabella Katharina von Harrach. The once formidable partner to one of the most powerful men in the Holy Roman Empire was suddenly thrust into a perilous position where her survival depended on wit, resolve, and a keen understanding of the treacherous political landscape. In the weeks following Wallenstein's murder, Isabella faced a hostile imperial court determined to strip her family of its wealth and influence. The emperor's ministers, eager to assert authority and punish what they branded as treason, moved quickly to confiscate Wallenstein's estates and dissolve his private army. For Isabella, these actions were not merely political but deeply personal. They threatened the legacy she and her husband had built and the future security of their children. Isabella's response was both pragmatic and courageous. Refusing to succumb to despair, she leveraged her noble lineage and family connections to mount a defense. She engaged in painstaking negotiations, petitioning the emperor and his council to reconsider the punitive measures against her family. Her letters, preserved in imperial archives, reveal a woman who combined eloquence with strategic insight, appealing to notions of justice, loyalty, and mercy. Her efforts were met with mixed results. While some sympathetic nobles recognized her plight and provided discreet support, others viewed her as a dangerous reminder of Wallenstein's ambition and potential threat to imperial unity. Navigating these divided opinions required Isabella to exercise exceptional diplomatic skill. She balanced firmness with conciliation, always mindful of the fine line between advocacy and provocation. Amid these political battles, Isabella also confronted profound personal loss. The assassination not only ended Wallenstein's life but also dismantled the world they had created together. Letters from this period show a woman wrestling with grief while maintaining composure in public, a testament to her resilience and strength. Isabella's social standing allowed her some protection. But the court's atmosphere was unforgiving. The once celebrated general was now branded a traitor, and by extension, his family carried the stigma. Isabella's role evolved from that of consort to advocate and protector. She worked tirelessly to preserve the honor of Wallenstein's name, commissioning memorials and supporting sympathetic historians who sought to portray him in a more favorable light. Her struggle was emblematic of the broader chaos of the 30 Years' War, where loyalty and betrayal intertwined, and survival depended on navigating shifting allegiances. Isabella's story challenges traditional narratives that marginalize women's roles in history, highlighting how her intellect and courage shaped outcomes in a male-dominated world. As months turned into years, Isabella's tenacity bore fruit. While the full restoration of Wallenstein's estates was impossible, she secured enough concessions to provide for her family's future. Her diplomatic acumen ensured that the Harrach name remained influential in Bohemia and the imperial court. Through Isabella's journey, we glimpse the human cost of power struggles and the indomitable spirit required to face them. Her legacy is not only intertwined with that of her husband but stands as a testament to the often unseen influence of women in shaping history. In the years following the storm of Wallenstein's assassination, Isabella Katharina von Harrach carved out a new role for herself as a guardian of memory and matriarch of a legacy threatened by erasure. The political landscape of Bohemia and the Holy Roman Empire remained turbulent, but Isabella's unwavering determination ensured that the name Wallenstein would not be consigned to the shadows. She worked tirelessly to restore her family's social standing and protect her children's inheritance. This was no small feat in a court still rife with factions that viewed her family with suspicion and hostility. Using her deep understanding of aristocratic networks and court politics, Isabella formed strategic alliances, marrying her children into other noble families and securing patronage that would safeguard their future. But Isabella's influence extended beyond mere survival. She became an active participant in shaping the historical narrative surrounding Wallenstein. Recognizing that history is often written by the victors, she commissioned writers and chroniclers who portrayed her husband not as a traitor but as a visionary military leader and loyal servant to the empire. These narratives helped rehabilitate Wallenstein's reputation over time, influencing how later generations would view his controversial career. Her patronage of the arts and letters contributed to a cultural memory that celebrated the complexities of Wallenstein's life and the era's brutal realities. Through this, Isabella ensured that the lessons of ambition, loyalty, and tragedy were preserved, echoing far beyond her own lifetime. Despite the personal hardships and political setbacks, Isabella's resilience never waned. She remained a respected figure within Bohemian nobility until her death, a symbol of endurance and dignity in a world that had shown her both favor and cruelty. Her story offers profound insights into the role of women in early modern Europe. Far from passive observers, women like Isabella were active agents who shaped political outcomes, managed dynastic fortunes, and influenced historical memory. Her life challenges simplified historical narratives and invites a richer understanding of power's many faces. As we reflect on Isabella Katharina von Harrach's journey from a noblewoman in a fractious empire to the steadfast protector of one of history's most enigmatic figures, we see a portrait of courage, intellect, and unwavering loyalty. Her legacy reminds us that history's grand events are often shaped as much by those working quietly behind the scenes as by those commanding armies on the battlefield. Isabella Katharina von Harrach's life is a testament to the intricate and often underappreciated power wielded by women in history's most tumultuous moments. Her steadfast loyalty and political savvy not only preserved her family's status in the wake of unprecedented tragedy, but also reshaped the narrative surrounding one of Europe's most complex military leaders. In an era when the continent was ravaged by religious warfare, shifting alliances, and the relentless struggle for power, Isabella's influence reveals the multifaceted nature of leadership. While history often leonizes generals and kings, Isabella's story illuminates the critical role of those who operate in the shadows, the advisors, diplomats, and family members whose decisions shape the outcomes of wars and empires. Her efforts to protect Wallenstein's legacy demonstrate a keen awareness of the power of memory and narrative. By commissioning histories that portrayed him as a loyal servant of the empire rather than a traitor, she challenged the dominant voices of her time and contributed to a more nuanced understanding of his life and the complexities of the 30 Years' War. This act of shaping history speaks to a broader theme, the struggle over who controls the story of the past. Isabella's success in influencing how Wallenstein was remembered underscores the importance of narrative in defining legacy, a lesson that resonates across centuries. Moreover, Isabella's story offers valuable insights for a modern audience. In a world where leadership is scrutinized and the roles of women continue to evolve, her life reminds us of the strength found in resilience, intellect, and strategic partnership. Her ability to navigate the dangerous political waters of her time while maintaining dignity and purpose is a powerful example of leadership beyond the battlefield. Today, as we reflect on the legacy of the 30 Years' War and the figures who shaped it, Isabella Katharina von Harrach stands out not only as Wallenstein's devoted wife but as a formidable force in her own right. Her story enriches our understanding of history, reminding us that behind every great figure lies a network of influence, sacrifice, and courage. In telling her story, we reclaim a vital piece of history that challenges traditional narratives and celebrates the complex human experiences at the heart of monumental events. Isabella's journey through love, loss, power, and survival continues to inspire, offering a timeless reflection on the enduring human spirit amid the relentless tides of history. Despite the turmoil and loss, Isabella's life after Wallenstein's assassination was not one of retreat but of quiet determination. She remained a pivotal figure within the Bohemian nobility, her resilience a beacon for her family and allies in uncertain times. Through strategic marriages of her children and continued engagement with the imperial court, she secured the Harrach family's place among the elite, ensuring that the shadows cast by Wallenstein's fall did not consume their future. Isabella's stewardship of her husband's legacy was equally deliberate. She understood that history is shaped as much by memory as by fact. By commissioning chroniclers and influencing narratives, she helped craft a version of Wallenstein that would endure beyond immediate politics, a military genius, a visionary leader, and a loyal subject caught in the crossfire of a merciless war. This act of legacy building was as much a political maneuver as a personal tribute, reflecting Isabella's sophisticated grasp of power. As the 30 Years' War continued to ravage Central Europe, Isabella's story intertwined with the broader currents of change. The destruction and suffering wrought by the conflict would reshape societies and borders. But the resilience of families like the Harrachs embodied the enduring strength of aristocratic networks and traditions. Looking forward, the final chapter of Isabella's life and influence invites us to consider not only her immediate impact but also the ways her legacy echoes through history. Her role challenges us to see history not as a simple chronicle of kings and generals, but as a tapestry woven from the lives of those who operated in the margins and shadows, the women, advisors, and strategists whose decisions shaped outcomes in profound ways. As the smoke of the 30 Years' War slowly began to clear and Europe entered a new era of political and religious realignments, the name Albrecht von Wallenstein remained etched in the collective memory of the continent, both revered and reviled. Yet, behind the towering figure of the general stood Isabella Katharina von Harrach, whose quiet but determined efforts ensured that his legacy would not be lost to the tides of history. Isabella's life after Wallenstein's death was marked by a tireless commitment to preserving not only her husband's memory, but also the fortunes and influence of her family. In a time when women's roles were often constrained by social and legal limitations, Isabella's actions demonstrated the considerable agency noblewomen could exert in shaping political and historical narratives. Her patronage of writers, chroniclers, and artists helped construct a nuanced portrayal of Wallenstein, as a complex man driven by loyalty, vision, and circumstance, rather than the simplistic label of traitor his enemies imposed. Through these cultural efforts, Isabella contributed to a historical discourse that recognized the ambiguity and tragedy inherent in the 30 Years' War. Moreover, Isabella's story sheds light on the broader experience of women in early modern Europe, who, despite systemic limitations, found ways to influence the course of events. As a mother, strategist, and social diplomat, she navigated a male-dominated world with intelligence and resilience, embodying a form of power that was subtle but no less significant. Her legacy also prompts reflection on the nature of historical memory, how narratives are constructed, contested, and preserved. Isabella's ability to shape how Wallenstein was remembered underscores the importance of agency in history, reminding us that the stories passed down through generations often reflect the efforts of those who fought to tell them. For modern audiences, Isabella's journey resonates on multiple levels. Her life invites us to reconsider the traditional focus on battlefield heroics and political machinations by highlighting the indispensable roles played by those working behind the scenes. Her story is one of partnership, sacrifice, and the enduring impact of leadership that transcends gender and circumstance. Isabella Katharina von Harrach's commitment to preserving her family's legacy was not limited to the immediate aftermath of Wallenstein's death. It extended across generations. Her children, born into a world reshaped by war and political upheaval, became the bearers of a complex heritage, one marked by both glory and controversy. Isabella took great care in orchestrating their futures, arranging advantageous marriages that strengthened the Harrach family's ties to other noble houses within the Habsburg realms. These alliances were more than social contracts. They were strategic moves designed to restore and maintain the family's influence in a court still wary of Wallenstein's memory. Through these calculated unions, Isabella ensured that the Harrachs would remain integral players in the political and social fabric of Central Europe. Her foresight preserved the family's status long after the embers of the 30 Years' War cooled, demonstrating her keen understanding of power's enduring nature. Parallel to these familial strategies was Isabella's influence on how history remembered Wallenstein himself. The general's legacy had been a subject of intense debate since his death. To some, he was a brilliant tactician and a visionary leader whose ambitions threatened imperial unity. To others, he was a traitor whose machinations undermined the very empire he vowed to serve. Isabella's patronage of historians and chroniclers was a deliberate effort to sway this narrative. She sought to humanize Wallenstein, presenting him as a man caught between duty and personal ambition, a victim of the ruthless politics that defined his era. This nuanced portrayal challenged the binary of hero and villain, inviting a more complex understanding of his role in the 30 Years' War. Over time, this perspective gained traction, influencing not only contemporary accounts but also the work of later historians, playwrights, and artists. Wallenstein became a symbol of the tragic costs of war and the ambiguities of loyalty, a legacy shaped in no small part by Isabella's dedication to preserving his memory. Isabella's story also offers a window into the agency of women during a period when their public roles were severely restricted. While the grand narratives of history often focus on kings, generals, and statesmen, the lives of women like Isabella reveal the vital influence wielded through diplomacy, family networks, and cultural patronage. Her ability to navigate the patriarchal structures of her time, leveraging her noble birth, social acumen, and intellectual capabilities, highlights the multifaceted ways women shaped political outcomes and historical narratives. Isabella's life challenges modern readers to rethink the parameters of power and influence in early modern Europe. For today's audiences, Isabella Katharina von Harrach's journey resonates as a story of resilience, strategic leadership, and the enduring impact of those who work behind the scenes. Her legacy reminds us that history is not solely the record of those who hold official titles but also of those whose courage and wisdom shape events from the margins. In reflecting on her life, we gain a richer, more inclusive understanding of history, one that honors the complexity of human experience and the diverse actors who have shaped the world. Isabella Katharina von Harrach's influence extended well beyond her immediate political and familial efforts. She was also a notable patron of the arts and letters, understanding the power of culture to shape public perception and historical memory, in commissioning biographies, sponsoring playwrights, and supporting artists. She cultivated a narrative that preserved Wallenstein's complexity, a man both brilliant and flawed, loyal yet misunderstood. This cultural patronage helped transform Wallenstein from a controversial historical figure into a larger-than-life character whose story resonated through the centuries. Notably, the famed German playwright Friedrich Schiller's early 19th-century drama, Wallenstein, echoed themes of ambition, loyalty, and tragedy that had been cultivated, in part, by the legacy Isabella helped forge. Through such works, Wallenstein's story entered the broader European cultural imagination, allowing generations to grapple with the moral ambiguities and human costs of power and war. Isabella's role in this transformation highlights an often overlooked facet of historical influence: the shaping of legacy through art and narrative. By nurturing sympathetic portrayals, she ensured that Wallenstein's name would endure, inviting continual reinterpretation and dialogue. This act of legacy building underscores how history is not only written by victors but also by those who carefully curate memory. As we consider Isabella's enduring impact, it becomes clear that her life challenges many assumptions about gender and power in early modern Europe. Her story reveals a woman who navigated and manipulated the structures around her with intelligence, resilience, and grace. She leveraged every tool available, from social diplomacy to cultural patronage, to protect her family's interests and shape history itself. For contemporary audiences, Isabella Katharina von Harrach's story offers powerful lessons. It reminds us that leadership comes in many forms, not solely on battlefields or thrones but in the subtle negotiations of influence. The courage to advocate amid adversity and the commitment to preserving truth and legacy. Her life is a testament to the enduring power of resilience and strategic vision in shaping history. As we conclude this exploration of Isabella's remarkable journey, we honor her as more than the wife of a famous general. She emerges as a force in her own right, a woman whose intellect and determination helped steer the course of an empire, shaped the memory of a man, and left an indelible mark on history. In celebrating Isabella Katharina von Harrach, we embrace a richer, more nuanced understanding of the past, one that recognizes the vital contributions of those who have often remained in history's shadows. Her legacy invites us to reconsider whose stories we tell and how we understand the complex tapestry of human endeavor that shapes our world. As we bring this story to a close, the life of Isabella Katharina von Harrach stands as a powerful reminder that history is shaped not only by the famous generals and rulers but also by those who support, influence, and often challenge them behind the scenes. Through war and peace, ambition and betrayal, Isabella's unwavering loyalty and strategic mind played a crucial role in one of Europe's most turbulent eras. Her partnership with Albrecht von Wallenstein was more than a marriage; it was a union of minds and wills, forged in the fires of the 30 Years' War. Together, they navigated the treacherous political waters of the Holy Roman Empire, balancing power, diplomacy, and survival. Isabella's intelligence and resilience ensured that even after Wallenstein's assassination, his legacy would not be lost to history's silence. For modern viewers, Isabella's story resonates as a testament to the strength and influence of women in shaping history. It challenges us to look beyond traditional narratives and recognize the countless individuals whose courage and wisdom have quietly altered the course of events. Her life offers timeless lessons on leadership, loyalty, and the enduring power of legacy. In a world where power dynamics continue to shift and where history is continually rewritten, Isabella Katharina von Harrach's journey reminds us of the importance of perspective, of listening to the voices often unheard, and appreciating the complex human stories behind the grand sweep of history. Thank you for joining this journey through time, exploring the remarkable life of Isabella and the indelible mark she left on history alongside Albrecht von Wallenstein. Their story is one of ambition, love, tragedy, and resilience, a narrative that continues to inspire and challenge us today. The story of Isabella Katharina von Harrach and Albrecht von Wallenstein is a vivid tapestry of ambition, power, loyalty, and sacrifice woven through one of Europe's darkest and most transformative periods. From the battlegrounds of the 30 Years' War to the shadowy halls of imperial courts, their lives reveal the human heart beating beneath the grand events of history. Isabella's unwavering strength and sharp intellect remind us that history is rarely shaped by the deeds of lone heroes. Instead, it is the product of alliances, partnerships, and the quiet courage of those who stand steadfast in the face of danger and uncertainty. Through love and loss, strategy and survival, Isabella carved out a legacy that endured far beyond the tumultuous years she lived through. Wallenstein's rise and fall illustrate the perilous nature of power, how ambition can inspire greatness but also sow the seeds of destruction. Yet, it is Isabella's story that breathes life into this history, offering a fresh perspective on the past and inviting us to honor those whose voices have often been lost in the noise of war and politics. As the echoes of their story reach us today, we are reminded that the past is not fixed. It is shaped by how we remember, reinterpret, and reimagine the lives of those who came before. Isabella Katharina von Harrach's journey challenges us to see history as a living dialogue, one enriched by the stories of resilience, wisdom, and influence often found behind the scenes. Thank you for walking this path through history with me. May the story of Isabella and Wallenstein inspire you to look deeper, question narratives, and recognize the enduring power of loyalty, courage, and the human spirit.